You are listening to HOA Justice Stories. I wish this was exaggerated. My name is Derek. I am a solar installation scheduler, and I live in Buffalo, New York in a neighborhood called the Cottages at Willow Glen Reserve. I moved here 2 years ago because the price was right and the commute to my office was easy. I spend my days dealing with city permits, roof inspections, and HOA approval forms for solar panel installs, so I know how bureaucracy works. I know how to read a covenant, I know what is enforceable and what is not, and I know when someone is making up rules on the fly. The HOA here is one of those places where curb appeal matters more than reality. Perfectly edged lawns, matching mailbox posts, and a board that treats the neighborhood like a movie set. I keep my head down, I follow the actual rules, and I do not cause trouble. That was my plan anyway, until I backed into my parking space one Tuesday afternoon and Laura Moore decided to make me her personal project. I pull into my driveway around 4 in the afternoon. It has been raining earlier, and there are puddles everywhere reflecting the late sun. I back my car into the space like I always do because it makes it easier to load my tools in the morning. I am barely out of the driver's seat when I hear the sound of fast footsteps on wet pavement. I turn around and there she is, Laura Moore, but everyone just calls her Susan behind her back because her middle name is Susan and it sounds less formal. She is the Community Standards Chair, which is HOA speak for the person who invents guidelines on the fly and enforces them like they are carved in stone. She has blonde hair pulled into a ponytail, a red light jacket, and a pink sun hat even though the sun is almost gone. In one hand she has a megaphone she uses for mailbox announcements, and in the other hand she is waving a boot clamp key like it is a badge of office. She does not even say hello, she just starts yelling. "You cannot park like that," she says, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "That is a violation." I blink at her, still holding my tire pressure gauge because I was about to check my front left tire. I say, "What are you talking about?" "I have been parking like this for 2 years. She shakes her head fast, ponytail whipping. "Not anymore," she says. "The board passed an addendum. No reverse parking. Fire safety." I stare at her. I say, "There is no addendum. I get every HOA email." She smiles, and it is the kind of smile that makes my stomach drop. She says, "It was distributed last month. If you did not read it, that is your problem. I do not need your explanation. I need your payment." I take a breath. I say, "Payment for what?" She taps the boot clamp key against her palm. She says, "The fine is $250 for the first offense. If you do not pay by Friday, we will boot your car and tow it." I laugh, because this is absurd. I say, "You cannot tow me from my own driveway." She leans in close, and I can smell her floral perfume mixed with the damp pavement. She says, "Watch me." Then she turns and walks away, her footsteps echoing in the quiet street. I stand there in the driveway with my tire pressure gauge in my hand, trying to process what just happened. A maintenance worker in a reflective vest is trimming hedges 2 houses down, watching silently. He does not say anything, but I can see the look on his face. He has seen this before. I go inside and I pull up every HOA email I have received in the last 6 months. There is nothing about reverse parking. There is nothing about a fire safety addendum. I check the official covenant document I got when I bought the house. Section 12 covers parking. It says residents may park in assigned spaces and driveways. It says guest parking requires a permit. It says no parking in fire lanes. It does not say anything about which direction you face your car. I take screenshots of everything. I save the covenant as a PDF. Then I sit down and I start typing an email to the HOA management company, a firm called Ridgeline Property Services that handles the day-to-day operations for the board. I explain the situation. I attach the covenant section. I ask them to clarify whether there is a reverse parking rule and, if so, where it was published. I hit send and I wait. The next morning I wake up and there is a certified letter taped to my front door. It is from the HOA. The letter is 2 pages long, printed on official letterhead with the cottages at Willow Glen Reserve Association across the top in a fancy serif font. It says, I am in violation of Community Standards Policy 4-7-B, Reverse Parking Prohibition, enacted April 6th. It says the fine is $250, due within 5 business days. It says failure to comply will result in enforcement action including, but not limited to vehicle booting, towing, and additional fees. It says I can appeal the fine by submitting a written request to the board within 72 hours. But the fine is still due during the appeal process. The letter is signed by Laura Moore, Community Standards Chair. At the bottom there is a handwritten note in blue ink. It says this is not personal, this is policy. But I know that is a lie. I call Ridgeline Property Services. The woman who answers is polite but distracted. She says she will look into it and get back to me. I say, how soon? She says within 2 business days. I say, the fine is due in 5 days. She says, I understand, but we have procedures. I hang up and I stand in my kitchen, staring at the certified letter. I have a flight early tomorrow for a work trip to Cleveland, a 2-day solar inspection job that I cannot reschedule. I cannot risk being blocked in or towed overnight. If they boot my car tonight, I miss my flight, I lose the contract, and my boss will have questions I do not want to answer. The stakes are higher than a parking fine. This is about my reputation in the neighborhood and my ability to do my job without constant harassment. I decide to pay the fine under protest and file a formal complaint later. I write a check for $250. I put it in an envelope with a cover letter that says, I am paying under duress and I reserve the right to appeal, and I drive to the HOA office, a small brick building near the neighborhood entrance. Laura is not there, but the office assistant takes my envelope and gives me a receipt. I ask if there is a copy of the parking addendum I can see. She says she will check. She goes into a back room and comes back 5 minutes later, empty-handed. She says the board has the master file and she does not have access. I say, so how am I supposed to know what the rule actually says? She shrugs. She says, you can request a copy in writing. I leave before I say something I will regret. That night I park on the street 2 blocks away, just to be safe. I do not want to give Laura any excuse to call a tow truck while I am asleep. I barely sleep. I keep thinking about the look on her face when she said, watch me. I keep thinking about the boot clamp key. I keep thinking about the fact that she is flooding my mailbox with certified letters to overwhelm me, and it is working. The next morning I drive to the airport, I fly to Cleveland, and I spend 2 days inspecting solar arrays on commercial rooftops. I do my job. I smile. I do not tell anyone what is happening back home. But the whole time, I am planning. When I get back to Buffalo on Thursday night, there is another certified letter waiting. This one is even worse. It says the HOA has received complaints about my vehicle obstructing sight lines. It says a safety vendor has been dispatched to install a reflective bollard in my driveway to prevent future violations. It says the cost of the bollard is $400 and it will be added to my account. It says the work is scheduled for Saturday morning and I do not need to be present. I read it twice. A vendor sent to alter something on my property without permission under the excuse of safety. I call Ridgeline again. This time I get a different person. A man named Greg who sounds tired. I say the HOA is trying to install a bollard in my driveway without my consent. He sighs. He says, "Let me pull your file." I wait. He comes back and says, "I see the work order. It was approved by the board." I say, "They cannot just put something on my property." He says, according to the covenant, the HOA can make safety improvements on common areas and limited common areas. I say, "My driveway is not a common area." He pauses. He says, "I will escalate this." I say, "I need an answer before Saturday." He says, "I will do my best." Friday morning, I get an email from Greg. It says the work order has been put on hold pending review. It says he has requested a copy of the parking addendum from the board and he will send it to me as soon as he receives it. It says the bollard installation is postponed. I feel a tiny bit of relief, but I know this is not over. I drive home from work that afternoon and I see a tow truck idling at the neighborhood entrance. The driver is a big guy with a beard and a baseball cap, leaning against the truck and scrolling his phone. I slow down as I pass. He looks up. We make eye contact. He nods. I nod back. I do not know why, but something about that moment feels important. That night I get a text from my neighbor, a guy named Phil who lives 3 doors down. The text says, "Heads up, Laura was going door to door today asking if anyone has seen you parked the wrong way. She has a clipboard." I text back, "Thanks." He sends another message. It says, "She is calling different tow drivers like she is speed dialing chaos." I screenshot the text and I add it to my evidence folder. Then I sit down and I start building a timeline. Every certified letter, every email, every interaction. I write it all down with dates and times. I am a solar scheduler. I know how to document a project. I know how to build a paper trail. And I know that Laura Moore is about to regret starting this fight. Saturday morning, I wake up early and I drive to the HOA office. It is closed, but there is a bulletin board outside with community announcements. I take photos of every notice. None of them mention reverse parking. I drive to the library and I pull up the county property records. I confirm that my driveway is on my deed, not listed as a common area. I print the record. Then I go to the hardware store and I buy a small dash cam. I install it in my car facing forward and I set it to record continuously. If Laura wants to play games, I am going to have evidence of every single move she makes. That afternoon, I am in my garage organizing tools when I hear a diesel engine rumbling up the street. I walk outside and I see the same tow truck from yesterday, backing slowly into the driveway across from mine. The driver gets out. It is the same guy with the beard. He is holding a clipboard and he looks uncomfortable. I walk over. I say, "What is going on?" He glances at me, then at the house. He says, "Got a call to pick up a vehicle. Expired registration." I say, "Whose call?" He hesitates. He says, "HOA." I say, "Does the car actually have expired registration?" He looks down at his clipboard. He says, "I do not know, man. I just get the work orders." I say, "You are going to tow a car based on an HOA call with no verification?" He shifts his weight. He says, "Look, I have done a lot of jobs for this HOA. Some of them are sketchy. I do not ask questions because I need the work. But off the record, you should know they call me for stuff that does not smell right." I feel my pulse quicken. I say, "Like what?" He glances around to make sure no one else is listening. He says, "Last month they had me tow a car from a guest spot because the permit was 10 minutes expired. The owner was still walking back from the mailbox. They made me hook it up anyway. Another time they called me to boot a car in a driveway because the owner was late on a fine. The car was not even in violation. They just wanted to pressure the guy. I say, "Did you report it?" He shakes his head. He says, "Report it to who?" The HOA is the client. If I do not do the job, they will find another driver who will. I nod slowly. I say, "I am dealing with the same thing. Laura Moore is targeting me over reverse parking." He snorts. He says, "Reverse parking, that is a new one." I say, "If she calls you to tow my car, will you do it?" He looks at me for a long moment. He says, "I will tell you what. If I get a call on your vehicle, I will let you know before I hook it up. That is the best I can do." I say, "I appreciate that." He climbs back into his truck and drives away. I stand in the street and I realize I just found my ally. Sunday afternoon, I get another certified letter. This one says the board has reviewed my appeal and denied it. It says the parking addendum was properly noticed under Section 18 of the bylaws, which allows the board to adopt operational policies without a full membership vote as long as notice is posted in a common area for 14 days. It says the notice was posted on the community bulletin board at the clubhouse from March 20th to April 3rd. It says my ignorance of the rule is not an excuse. It says I now owe an additional $100 late fee because I did not correct the violation within the appeal period. I read the letter 3 times. Then I get in my car and I drive to the clubhouse. The clubhouse is a low brick building with a small gym, a meeting room, and a kitchenette. The bulletin board is in the entryway, behind glass. I take photos of everything on the board. There are notices about pool hours, a yard sale, a book club meeting, and a reminder to pick up dog waste. There is nothing about parking. I scroll back through the photos on my phone to the ones I took yesterday at the HOA office. Same thing. No parking notice. I text Phil and I ask if he ever saw a parking notice posted anywhere. He texts back, "Nope." I screenshot that too. Then I call Greg at Ridgeline. He does not answer. I leave a voicemail. I said the board is claiming they posted a notice at the clubhouse, but there is no notice there now and I have photos proving it. I need the board meeting minutes from March and April to verify this rule was actually adopted. I hang up and I drive home. The whole way I am thinking about Section 18 of the bylaws. I pull up the PDF when I get inside. Section 18 does allow the board to adopt operational policies, but it says those policies cannot conflict with the recorded covenants. Reverse parking is not mentioned in the covenants. That means if the board wants to ban it, they need to amend the covenant, which requires a membership vote. Laura is bluffing. Monday morning, I get an email from Greg. It says the board has provided him with a copy of the parking addendum. He attaches a PDF. I open it. The document is titled Operational Policy Update 4-7-B, dated April 6th. It says reverse parking is prohibited in all resident driveways and assigned spaces due to fire safety concerns. It says violations will be subject to fines as outlined in the fee schedule. At the bottom there is a line that says, "Notice posted at the Clubhouse Bulletin Board March 20th through April 3rd per bylaw Section 18. I print the document. Then I email Greg back. I say, "I have photos of the Clubhouse Bulletin Board from this weekend, and there is no parking notice. Can you confirm the notice was actually posted?" He replies an hour later. He says, "I was not working here in March, so I cannot confirm. You would need to ask the board. I email the board directly." I say, "I am requesting proof that the parking notice was posted as claimed, including photos or witness statements." I do not get a reply. Tuesday afternoon, I am at work when my phone buzzes. It is a text from the tow truck driver. It says, "Just got a call on your vehicle. They want me at your address tonight at 8. I feel my stomach flip. I text back, what is the reason? He says, unauthorized overnight parking. I say, I am parked in my own driveway. He says, I know, I am stalling. I text back, thank you. Then I call Greg. He does not answer. I call the HOA office. The assistant says Laura is not available. I say, someone just called a tow truck on my car and I am parked legally in my driveway. She says, I will pass the message along. I hang up and I drive home immediately, leaving work early. When I pull into my driveway, I see Laura standing on the sidewalk with her megaphone and a printed parking map packet held out between us. She is talking to a different tow truck driver, a younger guy with a shaved head and a company polo. I park and I get out. I say, what is going on? Laura turns to me and smiles. She says, you were notified that overnight parking violations would be enforced. This vehicle will be towed. I say, I am parked in my driveway. That is not a violation. She shakes her head. She says, you are parked facing the wrong direction. That makes it unauthorized. The driver is hooking up a wheel lift to the back of my car. I say, stop. He ignores me. I pull out my phone and I start recording. Laura sees the phone and her smile drops. She says, you cannot record me without permission. I say, this is my property. I can record whatever I want. She turns to the driver and says, finish the job. I say, this is theft. The driver hesitates. I say, I am calling the police. Laura laughs. She says, go ahead and call whoever you want. I have a committee for that. I dial 911. The dispatcher answers and I explain the situation. I say, someone is trying to tow my car from my driveway without legal cause. The dispatcher says an officer will be on the way. I hang up and I look at Laura. I say, the police are coming. She shrugs. She says, fine, we will wait. The driver stops working and steps back from the truck. We stand there in the driveway, three of us in silence, while the sun drops lower and the shadows get longer. A maintenance worker in a reflective vest is across the street trimming hedges, watching silently. He does not say anything, but I can see him shaking his head. The police arrive 10 minutes later. It is a single officer, a woman in her 40s with short hair and a calm voice. She asks what is happening. I explain that I am parked legally in my driveway and the HOA is trying to tow my car based on a rule that does not exist in the covenant. Laura interrupts. She says, the rule absolutely exists, and he was notified. She pulls out a copy of the operational policy update and hands it to the officer. The officer reads it. She says, is this part of your recorded covenants? Laura hesitates. She says, it is an operational policy adopted under Bylaw Section 18. The officer looks at me. She says, do you have a copy of the covenants? I pull out my phone and I show her the PDF. She reads Section 12. She looks back at Laura. She says, I do not see anything here about reverse parking. Laura says, it is in the operational policy. The officer says, but operational policies are not enforceable by towing unless they are part of the recorded covenant. Laura's face goes red. She says that is not how it works. The officer says, actually, it is. She turns to the tow driver. She says, you cannot tow this vehicle. He nods and he starts unhooking the wheel lift. Laura is furious. She says this is not over. The officer says if you continue to harass this resident, he can file a complaint. Laura does not say anything. She just turns and walks away, her footsteps loud on the pavement. If you are enjoying this wild HOA nightmare, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories like this. After the officer leaves, I stand in my driveway and I feel the adrenaline draining out of my body. The tow driver finishes unhooking my car and he drives away without a word. I go inside and I sit down at my kitchen table. I pull up my evidence folder and I start writing a formal complaint to Ridgeline Property Services. I attach the covenant section, the photos of the bulletin boards, the text from Phil, the police report number, and a timeline of every interaction. I explain that Laura Moore is harassing me with fake rules, threatening illegal towing, and attempting to install unauthorized structures on my property. I say that the HOA is violating its own bylaws and I am requesting an immediate investigation. I hit send. Then I pour a glass of water and I try to calm down. I know this is not over. Laura does not back down. But I also know that I have something she does not know about. I have been keeping my plan quiet, because the HOA depends on controlling the narrative, and I am about to flip that narrative completely. Wednesday morning I get a reply from Greg. He says Ridgeline is opening an investigation into the complaint, and they will be in touch within 5 business days. He says in the meantime I should document any further incidents. I reply and I say, I have been documenting everything. That afternoon, I get a call from my ally, the bearded tow truck driver. He says, I thought you should know Laura called me again this morning. She wanted me to come back tonight and try again. I told her I was booked. She said she would find someone else. I say thanks for the heads up. He says, be careful, she is not going to stop. I hang up and I realize I need to move faster. I call my attorney, a guy named Ron who helped me with my home purchase. I explain the situation. He listens and then he says, you need to file a records complaint with the state. HOAs are required to follow open meeting laws when they adopt policies. If they did not hold a proper meeting, the policy is void. I say, how do I do that? He says, I can draft the complaint for you. It will cost about $500. I say, do it. He says he will have it ready by Friday. Thursday morning I wake up and there is a piece of paper tucked under my windshield wiper. It is a photocopy of a diagram showing my car in the driveway with chalk marks drawn around the tires. At the top someone has written in pen, parked overnight, violation recorded. I take a photo of the paper. Then I check my dashcam. The timestamp shows my car has not moved since I parked it Tuesday night. I pull up the video and I see Laura walking up to my car at 6:30 this morning with a piece of chalk in her hand. She draws marks on the pavement next to my tires, takes a photo with her phone, and walks away. I save the video. Then I text Phil. I say, do you have a security camera that faces the street? He says, yeah, why? I say, I need footage from this morning around 6:30. He says, I will check. An hour later, he sends me a video file. It shows Laura walking up my driveway with chalk in her hand, marking my tires and leaving. I forward the video to Ron. He replies, this is gold. She just fabricated evidence. Friday afternoon, Ron emails me the records complaint. It is a formal filing with the State Attorney General's office, alleging that the cottages at Willow Glen Reserve Association adopted Operational Policy 4-7-B without following open meeting laws. It requests a review of the board meeting minutes from March and April, and it asks the state to investigate whether the HOA is operating in compliance with New York Nonprofit Corporation law. Ron says he will file it on Monday. I say thank you. He says one more thing. If you have any audio or video of Laura admitting this is personal, that would be very helpful. I pause. I say I might. He says, let me know. I hang up and I think about the trump card I have been holding. I have not told anyone about it yet, not even Ron. But now is the time. 2 weeks ago, before any of this escalated, I ran into Laura at the neighborhood pool. She was sitting at a table with another board member, a woman named Diane. I was walking past and I heard Laura say my name. I stopped and I listened. She did not see me. She was telling Diane that she wanted to make an example of me because I had filed a complaint about her last year when she tried to fine me for having my trash cans visible from the street. She said, "This is not about the rules. This is about showing people what happens when they push back." Diane laughed and said, "You are ruthless." Laura said, "I know." I recorded the whole conversation on my phone. I saved the file. I did not use it because I wanted to see if I could resolve this without burning everything down. But Laura has not stopped. She has escalated. And now I am going to deploy the trump card the way I planned from the start. I am going to hand copies to my ally first, then we are going to present together so Karen cannot isolate me. Saturday morning I meet the tow truck driver at a coffee shop near the highway. I bring a USB drive with the audio file, the dashcam video, the fake chalk diagram, and all the photos. He listens to the audio clip and his eyes go wide. He says, "She actually said that?" I say, "Yeah." He says, "This is insane." I say, "I need you to be a witness. If I go to the board alone, they will dismiss it. But if you back me up with your stories about the sketchy tow jobs, we can show a pattern." He nods slowly. He says, "All right, I am in. What do you need me to do?" I say, "There is a board meeting Monday night. I need you to show up and tell them what you told me." He says, "They are not going to like that." I say, "I know, but it is the only way this stops." He agrees. We shake hands. I leave the coffee shop and I feel like I am finally ahead of the game. Monday afternoon, I get an email from Ridgeline. Greg says the investigation is complete and they have determined that Operational Policy 4-7-B was not properly adopted. He says the board did not hold a noticed meeting and there is no record of a vote. He says the policy is void and all fines related to it are being refunded. He says a formal letter will be mailed to me within 3 business days. I forward the email to Ron. He replies, "Great news, but do not let your guard down. She is going to retaliate." I say, "I know. That is why I am going to the meeting tonight." He says, "Good luck." The board meeting is at 7 in the evening, held in the clubhouse meeting room. I arrive at 6:45. The room is set up with a long table at the front and folding chairs for residents. Laura is already there, sitting at the table with 3 other board members. She sees me and her expression hardens. I sit in the front row. A few other residents trickle in. Phil shows up and sits next to me. At 7, the meeting starts. The board president, an older man named Carl, reads through the agenda. When he gets to new business, I raise my hand. He says, "Yes?" I say, "I would like to address the board about the parking enforcement issue." Carl nods. He says, "You have 3 minutes." I stand up. I pull out a folder with printed copies of everything. The covenant section, the voided policy, the fake chalk diagram, the dashcam video stills, and the audio transcript. I say, over the past 2 weeks, Laura Moore has harassed me with fake rules, threatened illegal towing, fabricated evidence, and violated HOA bylaws. I have documentation of all of it. I hand a copy to Carl, and I hand copies to the other board members. Laura stands up. She says, "This is absurd." I have done nothing wrong. I say, "You told Diane this was personal and you wanted to make an example of me." I have the recording. Her face goes pale. I pull out my phone and I play the audio clip. Laura's voice fills the room. This is not about the rules. This is about showing people what happens when they push back. The room goes silent. Carl looks at Laura. He says, "Is that you?" She does not answer. I say, I also have video of her fabricating a parking violation by drawing chalk marks on my driveway and claiming my car was parked overnight when it had not moved. I show the dashcam video on my phone. Phil stands up. He says, I have security camera footage that shows the same thing. We can verify it. Another resident raises her hand. She says, Laura tried to fine me last month for having a garden hose visible from the street. She said it was in the rules, but I could not find it anywhere. Carl rubs his face. He says, Laura, do you have a response? She says, I was enforcing community standards. Carl says, by fabricating evidence? She does not answer. Carl says this meeting is going into executive session. All residents need to leave. I say, one more thing. The tow truck driver you have been using is here, and he has information about other violations. The birded driver stands up in the back row. He says, I have done jobs for this HOA that were not legal. I was told to tow cars with no verification, boot vehicles for non-payment before due process, and ignore complaints from residents. If you want details, I can provide them. Carl looks like he is going to be sick. He says, we will reconvene this discussion at a later date. Meeting adjourned. Everyone files out of the room. I walk outside into the cool evening air. Phil pats me on the back. He says that was incredible. The tow driver comes over. He says, I think I just lost a client. I say, you will find better ones. He laughs. He says, yeah, probably. We shake hands again and he leaves. I stand in the parking lot and I check my phone. There is an email from Ron. He says the State Attorney General's office has opened an investigation into the HOA based on the records complaint. He says they are requesting all meeting minutes and financial records going back 2 years. I text him back. I say the board just imploded at the meeting tonight. He replies, good. Let them scramble. The next morning I get a call from Carl. He says the board held an emergency executive session last night. He says Laura Moore has resigned from the Community Standards Chair position effective immediately. He says the board is issuing a formal apology and all fines related to parking enforcement are being refunded in full. He says they are also reviewing the vendor contract with the tow company and making changes to the enforcement process. I say, what about the records complaint? He says, we are cooperating fully with the state. He pauses. He says, I want to apologize personally. I did not know what was happening. I say, you are the board president. You should have known. He does not argue. He just says, you are right. I hang up. Wednesday afternoon, I get a certified letter. This one is different. It is from the HOA attorney, a firm called Bachman & Associates. The letter says the board has conducted an internal review and determined that multiple enforcement actions were taken without proper authority. It says the HOA is reversing all fines and fees related to parking violations, and it says they are refunding $250 plus the $100 late fee to my account. It says the board is implementing new oversight procedures to prevent future abuses. At the bottom there is a line that says, the HOA attorney forces a reversal to reduce liability. I smile. That is exactly what I wanted. Thursday morning I am at work when Phil texts me. He says, you need to see this. He sends a photo. It is a notice posted on the clubhouse bulletin board. The notice says Laura Moore has stepped down from the board and the position of Community Standards Chair is now vacant. It says the board is accepting applications for a replacement. Below that, someone has written in marker, good riddance. I screenshot the photo and I send it to Ron. He replies, nice work. I say thanks. He says, the state AG is moving forward with the investigation. If they find financial irregularities or other violations, this could get bigger. I say, let me know if you need anything else from me. He says, "Will do." Friday afternoon, I am in my driveway loading tools into my car when I see Laura walking down the street. She is not wearing her pink sun hat. She does not have her megaphone. She looks smaller somehow. She sees me, and she stops. For a second, I think she is going to say something, but she just turns and walks the other way. I do not call out to her. I just watch her go. A maintenance worker in a reflective vest is trimming hedges across the street, watching silently. He gives me a thumbs up. I nod back. That evening, I get a call from Greg at Ridgeline. He says the management company is terminating its contract with the cottages at Willow Glen Reserve Association effective in 60 days. He says the state investigation revealed multiple compliance failures, and Ridgeline does not want the liability exposure. He says the board will need to find a new management company or self-manage. I say, "What happens to my refund?" He says, "It will be processed before the contract ends." I say, "Good." He says, "For what it is worth, you did the right thing. Most people do not fight back." I say, "I am not most people." He laughs and hangs up. A week later, I get a check in the mail, $350, the full refund of all fines. There is a cover letter from Carl apologizing again and saying the board is committed to rebuilding trust with the community. I deposit the check. Then I sit down and I write an email to the entire neighborhood using the community distribution list. I explain what happened. I attach the audio clip, the dashcam video, the fake chalk diagram, and the attorney letter. I say, this is what happens when one person is allowed to abuse their authority without oversight. I say, if you have been targeted by Laura Moore or the board, you are not alone. I say, we deserve better. I hit send. Within an hour, my inbox is flooded with replies. People thank me for speaking up. People share their own stories of harassment and fake fines. One woman says Laura tried to fine her for planting flowers in her front yard without approval. A man says he was threatened with a lien for having his garage door open during the day. Another resident says she was told she could not have a bird feeder because it attracted wildlife. The emails keep coming. I forward them all to Ron. He replies, "This is a class action waiting to happen." I say, "Let me know if you want to pursue it." He says, "I will talk to some colleagues." 2 weeks after the meeting, I am at the painted fire lane curb near the neighborhood entrance, checking my tire pressure with my slim tire pressure gauge, when a car pulls up. It is Diane, the board member who was with Laura at the pool. She rolls down her window. She says, "Can we talk?" I say, "Sure." She gets out of the car. She says, "I want to apologize. I did not know Laura was doing half of this stuff. I should have asked more questions." I say, "You laughed when she said she wanted to make an example of me." She winces. She says, "I know. That was wrong. I was trying to be supportive and I did not think about what she was actually saying." I say, "Well, it is on tape now." She nods. She says, "I resigned from the board yesterday. I am done." I say, "Good." She gets back in her car and drives away. I finish checking my tire pressure and I stand there for a moment, looking at the fire lane curb where this whole thing started. It feels like a different world now. A month later, the State Attorney General's office releases a preliminary report. The report says the cottages at Willow Glen Reserve Association violated open meeting laws, failed to maintain proper financial records, and allowed individual board members to take enforcement actions without board approval. The report says the HOA must implement a corrective action plan within 30 days or face sanctions. The insurance carrier issues a non-renewal warning, demands reforms within days, and the board caves because the whole neighborhood could lose coverage. Carl calls an emergency membership meeting to present the corrective action plan. I attend. The room is packed. Carl stands at the front and he looks exhausted. He says the board is adopting new bylaws, hiring a professional management company with proper oversight, and creating a resident advisory committee to review all enforcement actions. He says the board is also issuing formal apologies to everyone who was fined or harassed under the previous enforcement regime. He does not mention Laura by name, but everyone knows who he is talking about. The membership votes to approve the corrective action plan. It passes unanimously. After the meeting, I am walking to my car when I see the bearded tow truck driver leaning against his truck in the parking lot. He says, "I heard the HOA is getting a new management company." I say, "Yeah." He says, "I lost the contract, but I picked up 3 new clients from other neighborhoods who heard I was willing to push back on sketchy jobs." I say, "Good for you." He says, "Thanks for including me in all this. I learned a lot." I say, "Same." We shake hands and he drives away. I get in my car and I sit there for a moment, thinking about everything that has happened. It has been exhausting. It has been stressful, but it has also been worth it. Because I did not back down. I built my case. I gathered my evidence. And I made sure Laura Moore could not control the narrative. A few days later, I get a letter in the mail from Laura. It is handwritten on plain paper, no HOA letterhead. She says she is sorry for what happened. She says she let the stress of the job get to her and she made mistakes. She says she hopes I can forgive her someday. I read the letter twice. Then I put it in a drawer and I do not reply. Some apologies are too late, some damage is too deep, and some people only say sorry when they get caught. I park in my driveway every day now, facing whatever direction I want. No one says a word. The new management company sends monthly newsletters with clear rules and enforcement procedures. The resident advisory committee meets every quarter and reviews complaints. The neighborhood feels different. People are not afraid to speak up anymore. Phil texts me regularly with updates. The HOA is actually functional now, he says. It is weird. I laugh. I say, enjoy it while it lasts. He replies, I will. A few months later, I am at the hardware store buying supplies for a solar install when I run into Carl. He is in the paint aisle. He sees me and he nods. He says, "How is everything?" I say, "Good." He says, "I owe you another apology. I should have been paying attention." "You saved this neighborhood from a lawsuit." I say, "I saved myself. You just happen to benefit." He smiles. He says, "Fair enough." We shake hands and I leave. On the way home, I stop at the clubhouse and I check the bulletin board. There is a notice about the next board meeting, a flyer for a neighborhood cleanup day, and a reminder to register for the summer pool pass. No fake parking rules. No threats. No chaos. Just a normal HOA doing normal things. That night I sit on my porch with a beer and I watch the sun go down over the neighborhood. The cottages at Willow Glen Reserve looks peaceful in the fading light. Neat lawns, matching mailboxes, trees swaying gently in the breeze. It is the kind of place that looks perfect from the outside. And now, for the first time in a long time, it actually feels livable on the inside too. I kept my plan quiet because the HOA depends on controlling the narrative. But in the end, the truth was louder than any megaphone. Karen got embarrassed when her own quote played on speaker. The HOA attorney forced a reversal to reduce liability. And I never came by, except the doorbell video played and proved everything I said was true. I finish my beer and I go inside. Tomorrow I have a solar install in Rochester and I need to get up early. But tonight I sleep well, because I know that I stood up for myself and I won. Not with violence, not with fraud, not with anything illegal. Just with a paper trail, a good attorney, and the willingness to fight back when someone tried to bully me into submission. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next HOA story.